Hello, Ramley and other NFL family. Forgot my button here. Hello, everyone. This is a Sunday afternoon live stream. I'm Peo Time, your Canadian Rams fan. Welcome in. We're glad that you're here with us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Thanks for tuning on in. We're going to have a great time this afternoon talking about the Rams. Let me just cut the music there. I am joined today by Mark from the Rams Up podcast. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Peo? Glad to be here.
I'm doing good. And for everyone out there watching, please note that the link to Mark's channel is in the description below, and also I've pinned it in the live chat. And I've been listening to the Rams Up podcast for a couple of months now. And then I just a couple of weeks ago found out that you had a YouTube channel for the podcast. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I got to get him on the show. So I appreciate you being here. Make sure, everyone, that if you love Rams content, you need to go subscribe to Mark's YouTube channel, LA Rams Up. And Mark, could you just let's start with that before we get into it. What inspired you to start the Rams Up podcast, and how long have you been doing it for?
I started in February 2021 was my first podcast, and I knew nothing about generating a podcast. Absolutely nothing. I listened to podcasts. I just thought after listening to some other Rams podcasts, none of the content really provided what I wanted to hear. And I thought, you know what, I can maybe do this and maybe do an even better job. I've done some sports writing over the years. I think I can generate content on paper pretty well already. So well, let's dive into this. Let's see if I can do this. And I started doing my research, doing my homework, and my first few podcasts were probably pretty horrible. I think I had a $30 mic, didn't really know what I was doing. And then I slowly, hopefully got better and better. And I'm just trying to generate content that diehard Ram fans like, a balance of information and just have fun with it at the same time now. Just information, opinions, insights. And I think my mission is also, I try to be an optimist at all times. I'm one of those fans that always see things as the cup half full, even now, as things seem to be going a little sideways with our roster, maybe. Yeah. But that's kind of how it all started. I was just couldn't find a podcast I really liked, and I don't mean that the podcasts out there aren't good. It's just a matter of taste and what you want to hear.
Totally.
That's what I've been doing.
Absolutely. And Mark, as someone who I also enjoy making positive Rams content. Maybe that's one of the reasons I love your podcast. And so I'm honored to meet you and collab with you. And thank you for your hard work in creating high quality Rams content for Rams fans to consume. That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Give a couple of shout outs to people in the chat. We got Ramsey here. We got Nifty in the house. We got AutoCon, and I'm sure some others will be joining us here. If you're watching live and you have a question about anything Rams related for myself or Mark, we are happy to take those questions. You can just put them in the chat and we will do our best to get to all of them. But let's start off here. So Mark, it's no secret that right now, I compare the state of the Rams to, when you go on vacation and you spend a lot of money and you kind of get nickeled and dimed, and then you come home and you're like, okay, I need to eat the pork and beans. I need to, not eat out. I need to, try and walk to work, save on gas, and you're just sort of cutting costs. What are your thoughts on the Rams, cap situation and just the moves they've made this off season so far?
Well, a couple of months ago, I was of the thinking that they were going to spread out the cap hits over this year and next year. I knew it was going to be a little bit painful. I thought they were going to focus on restructuring and try to bring in 2 or 3 free agents, re-sign a couple guys, and make a good run at it this year and run it back, as they say, or at least attempt to. And I think
Mhm.
it's pretty clear right now what they're doing is I don't want to get into the rebuild versus remodel. It's all semantics, but it's obvious that they are, as I've said on my podcast a couple of times, they're taking it on the chin this year, um, eating all those cap hits this year as opposed to next year, and trying to clean the slate for next year, and
Mhm.
um, adding draft picks for next. I think they're eventually going to add some draft picks for next year through this next draft. Make trade around, build up some draft capital for next year. But that said, I still think this is a good roster. I don't think it's going to be a doomsday 2023 season for the Rams. There are some obvious holes at edge and cornerback specifically. Greg Gaines is gone now.
Yeah.
There's some holes, but I think when you look across this roster, there's questions, but there's also, as Les Snead said, some pillars. And I think they're still going to be competitive. This is that optimist side of me coming out again, but I have a hard time believing that this team isn't going to find a way to win 8 or 9 games and maybe steal a couple as well. Kind of like how I felt about the Seahawks last year. Everybody thought they were just going to be kind of crappy.
Terrible. Yeah.
And I kept on saying that this team's they're well coached. They still have some good players on their roster, and don't be surprised if they find a way to get it done. And they did. And I kind of feel the same way about this Rams team. They're obviously focusing on 2024, but they're not going to roll over in 2023. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something that we don't give, the Rams maybe enough credit for, is they're willing to eat dead cap. A lot of teams, a lot of owners, they don't want to do that, right? They take their bad contracts or their contracts that are maybe not bad but inconvenient, and they eat them, they try and trade them or play it out. Where the Rams are, kind of in this mindset of, okay, you know what? This last season wasn't ideal, but we're going to try and have a big draft here because, one good draft can change your entire roster in a hurry. And, we still have some players. So if this is and again, like you said, I've heard it. The Rams are retooling, remodeling, rebuilding, all those things. I call it a Rams build. And what's going to happen is when we are here September, when we see our team on the field in September, I think some people are going to be surprised. I think that a lot of Ram fans are going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and the first time Stafford hits Kupp for a 48-yard catch and run, hopefully in the first quarter of the first game, it's going to bring back some good memories. And I think it's going to be important to get out of the gate well. Hopefully we open up with a couple games that aren't super challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of the gate fairly well. I think that'll be important. Be interested to see. I really can't wait to see how the schedule breaks out for us.
Yeah.
Hopefully we have there's no gimmies in the NFL, but hopefully a team that will have a good chance of beating.
Yeah, you'd like to see the Rams get in a rhythm early. That'd be nice to see that again for sure. We have a couple of questions here. The first one was from Nifty Takedown, and he says, "Who else is disappointed that Baker went to the Buccaneers instead of playing with the Rams?" Now, I'll just start by saying I was optimistic that if the QB carousel happened around the NFL, that the Rams had a shot of re-signing Baker as the backup. What are your thoughts on the Baker? Did you think there was ever much of a chance of him coming back to the Rams?
Well, given the direction they're obviously taking, I would say no. Early on, I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to have Baker Mayfield back. But if they're obviously, interested in more 2024 than this year, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to spend the money on Baker. I mean, I'm not sure what contract he got from the Bucs. I'm sure it's a lot more than the Rams would be willing to pay at this point. What do they have? $10 million in cap space.
Yeah, I think it was like a 1 year, $8 million or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed in a lot of things. Greg Gaines leaving, Nick Scott leaving.
Mm.
The list goes on and on. But Leonard Floyd. But you have to be realistic at the same time. And yeah, disappointed Baker Mayfield moved on, but I totally understand it at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, I'll always treasure, the Raiders victory, the
Oh
Baker led,
yeah,
and then of course the Christmas feast, I like to call it, where Baker had himself a game there, and the reality is he made the Rams a lot more watchable this year by coming.
yeah. I think he's the perfect, a perfect backup quarterback. They can come in, extend plays a little bit, make plays off schedule. He's really exciting. Um,
Mhm,
certainly better than Wolford and Perkins.
mhm.
And I'm not sure if I think for the Bucks he's just a 1 year starter until they get it figured out, and
Yeah,
that makes sense for him. That makes sense for the Bucks and for Baker, I think.
yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Nifty has one more question here. And he says, "What do you guys think the Rams will do to address the holes in the defense?" Clearly, I think I, I believe you've mentioned this on your podcast, and I've heard some other Ram fans talk about this. The Rams are looking to get younger on defense. They're looking to get cheaper on defense. We had a lot of money invested in the defense, and I think they're going to look primarily to the draft. I don't see them going and making a big trade or a big free agent signing for this defense this year.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I'd be really surprised if those first three picks, one of them's got to be a cornerback and one of them's got to be an edge, and I could see two cornerbacks and an edge. The only qualifying factor on that is this is a really deep draft in cornerbacks, so they
Mhm.
could wait later for their second cornerback, but they got to replenish that. Those two groups definitely. Now, I always forget how this works. There's a certain point in time. I think it's after the draft where you can sign free agents that don't won't ding you in the comp equation, the compensatory pick equation. So
Mhm.
there will probably be some late cuts by other teams or some straggling free agents that the Rams will grab to help replenish that defense. But I think it's very clear to me, as they do almost every year, they want four compensatory picks, and they're probably going to get four comp picks. And if you sign a free agent right now, that'll work against it. Right, it dings you in that formula. So I think they're just waiting, and they're gonna, they got 11 draft picks. I think they're
Yeah,
going to end up drafting 9, 10, 11, or 12 guys, and I
yeah.
would expect most, the majority of them to be on defense.
Definitely, yeah, and they'll have opportunities to move up and down that draft board to get the guys that they want, which is what you want to see. A couple of shout outs here. I see Browser Zilla. Good to see you. I appreciate you talking about the stadium. JJ Fordings, hello. Drew Mix Smith, the M Mix fan. Jack 42 coming on in. Exotic soy sauce, South Dakota Rams. Oh, we got lots of good people in here. Ray's in here. And Ray asked a question. Hey, Ray. And before Ray's question, everyone, thanks for coming on in. Friendly reminder, Mark from Rams Up Podcast, link to his channel is in the description below. If you haven't listened to Rams Up Podcast, what are you doing? You're missing out on a great time. Make sure to go give him a sub. Ray asks, he says, I'd like the Rams to take Heldon Hooker at quarterback. Do you think he'll drop to the third round? I've only looked up a few highlights of his myself. Are you familiar with Hooker?
I don't know much about him. I know that he's kind of after that first group of quarterbacks, I think, maybe second, third round. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where he's slated. I think he's slated for the second round right now. I don't know what the Rams would look for in a quarterback right now. Are they looking for, do they really expect to get Stafford's heir apparent? Or are they looking for a guy that can come in and back up really quickly get spun up, a quick study to get spun up so we don't have that debacle last year if Stafford misses a couple games. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure which hooker would be. Would he be the long term, heir apparent to Stafford? I don't know. I don't know enough about him at this point, so I'm not sure I can answer that question. If he'll drop to the third, the bigger question for me would be: do we want to spend one of those third round picks on a quarterback? I don't know. I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't. If we're going to win in 2024, be competitive in 2023, go back to the Super Bowl in 2024 because that's the end game, right? Is Hendon Hooker going to help us get there? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I think we'll expand on this a little bit here. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Rams quarterback room in general. I know that a lot of Ram fans, including myself, were hoping for like a Gardner Minshew or another veteran quarterback. But we're seeing one by one these veteran quarterbacks are getting some pretty decent paychecks. So I don't think the Rams are going that route. And we've never seen Sean McVay actually draft a quarterback before. So that's something that I'd be fascinated if there was a quarterback that Sean McVay is like, you know what, this is our guy, right? I mean, it looks like Wolford's not going to come back. It looks like they're letting Perkins test out free agency, and I've heard that he's had some other teams interested in him just because he is a young player with some experience now. So it's going to be interesting to see. Going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, if I was Les Snead, I'd be looking for a fifth or sixth round quarterback that could come in and be a quick study.
Yeah.
But hey, this is just me talking. I could be way off on that. And there are a few quarterbacks, I think, out there that kind of fit the bill, that you could grab in the fifth or sixth round, and they're not your future. But hey, just be ready if something happens to Matt and get us through 2 or 3 games if Stafford gets hurt.
Well, and I think that's the big thing, right? Because at times, when Stafford went down last year, we struggled to move the ball.
Right? Oh, I know it was horrible.
We get the ball at like the 40, like good field position, and you still struggle to get past half, and you settle for a long field goal attempt, and it's infuriating.
Yeah, I do my push-up challenge during Ram games sometimes, where I do the number of push-ups on the scoreboard every time it changes. And in the good days, I was getting 150 push-ups, and then let's 2023. I wasn't getting any push-ups in. It reminded me of the Jeff Fisher days. I was like, seriously, 3 points and a half. It's just not Sean McVay football.
No. And hey, that's a great way to stay in shape, though, the push-up challenge. And you know what? You hear that, Sean McVay and Les Snead, we want Mark to be doing more push-ups next year.
Yeah. There was a couple of games. What game was it? The Denver game.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't keep up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I could. Oh yeah. You must have. And that was on Christmas too. So
yeah, it took me 3 days.
Yeah. No kidding. That's awesome. You got Bradley here. Hello. And we also got Doc in the house. Good to see you, Doc. He's saying the wholesale release of the best Rams players continues. I hope they have a plan to replace the gaps. I think they do. They released both quarterbacks, may re-sign Perkins at lower cost. I'd support that over a new rookie. Doc, I always appreciate your comments and your takes. Mark, what are your thoughts on this? While we're talking about kind of the backup quarterback situation, do you think there's a scenario where we have either Perkins or Wolford back as our backup, next year? I feel like the Rams would have a hard time selling that to Rams fans.
Well, I would think if I were Les Snead, I would keep one of them and use a late draft pick on a quarterback, or find maybe there's someone out there that has a little bit of experience that they could bring in, and have those 3 guys. Stafford, Perkins would be my choice over. I used to like Wolford more, but I was really disappointed in his. Well, it's kind of important, his throwing ability. At least Perkins can create a little bit off schedule and do a little bit of running. think he's more dangerous in the red zone like that. So that would be my thought. Bring back Perkins and draft, maybe a 6th rounder. There's some guys there, that I've eyeballed. I don't, you never know when these guys are really going to get drafted, but there's guys I like that I would hope would still be there in the 6th round. I wouldn't draft a quarterback earlier, I don't think.
Definitely, and I also was a big fan of John Wolford, and I think the way that I always kind of my take on Wolford now is he's an incredible story who got an opportunity. He played well in limited capacity, but it did become clear that he can't consistently be an NFL starting quarterback in this league. And especially last year in some of the games where he was just constantly throwing his receivers high, I was scared. Like he wasn't protecting his receivers because he was just always overthrowing it. And Cooper Kupp took a really bad hit late in the game that kind of aggravated his injury. So I'd be okay seeing Perkins come back. I do think that it's time for John Wolford to move on.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking just through the comments here. Let's see, lots of cool people in the chat here. Okay, no specific questions other than this one here by Nifty. How long will Cooper Kupp be a Ram? Eventually, he will get really expensive. Well, he kind of already is. So will he eventually be traded or let go, or will he accept a lower paycheck to stay with the Rams? I would be so bold to say that Cooper Kupp is quickly becoming one of my favorite Rams of all time. Just you love him on and off the field. He is a class act. I love that he never looks for a flag from a ref, even though when he probably could. Love his attitude, love his work ethic. What are your thoughts on Cooper Kupp, and do you think he retires a Ram?
Well, it's a little early to say, but there are certain players that over the course of my years watching the Rams, that I just cannot envision in another team's uniform. And there's very few of them. And I think it's a PR thing too. Yeah, there you go. It's a PR thing too, and I think two guys on the team right now that would look really bad if they moved on from the Rams at any point, and that would be Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp.
Absolutely.
So I would hope they both retire as Rams. There's over the course of the years, another guy that falls into that category would be Isaac Bruce. I was a big fan of Isaac Bruce, and at the end of his career, you remember he spent the one season with the 49ers, and I don't think Isaac Bruce even enjoyed that. So I don't know. Yeah, Cooper Kupp, the Rams will keep him around as long as possible, and hopefully he'll retire as a Ram. I don't think, with his injury history, I hate to say this, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that plays, he's not going to have a super long career, unfortunately. He's already had, he's had the one serious injury, and last year, that was a pretty good ding he took. So, hopefully he'll be a Ram forever, though.
That's fair, and you know what? That's why it's you gotta celebrate players like that when you have them, right? Because they come and go, in a blink of an eye. It seems it's still crazy to me that Aaron Donald. Like I remember Aaron Donald getting drafted, and Ram fans have gotten to see. Like I am honored that I've gotten to see every game of Aaron Donald's career, and just like when you take time and when you're watching television and you see him 99 lined up and just see him plow over like 3 offensive linemen, it just it gets you going.
Yeah. A lot of people that may just jump in and watch, a handful of Rams plays, and I don't see what the big deal is about this guy. He didn't even make a tackle, and they just don't understand the things that he can do on a football field. And the same with Cooper Kupp. He's a special dude, and every year, he's very clear about it. He says that every year his goal is to get better. He's trying to get better and better and better, and it's the sky's the limit for that guy. He could end up being, if he does extend his career, hopefully, another 7, 8, 9 years, possibly. He's going to end up in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, yeah, he's on that trajectory for sure. Um, Before we get to any of the questions here, I do want to remind everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Mark from Rams Up Podcast. Link to his YouTube channel, and you're available on Spotify and Apple as well, correct?
Yeah, I should be. The podcast is available on all the platforms, pretty
Awesome.
much, I think. And then the YouTube channel. Our podcast actually gets published. The audio version of our podcast gets published to YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and then we create. I try to create, a video or two a week that I publish directly to the YouTube channel, and I've been doing YouTube Shorts. I don't know if anyone's caught it. I've been doing my top 50 Rams of all time countdown. They're published as shorts. They're like 17 seconds long.
Yeah,
I
they're
think
great.
I've started at 50, counting down. I think I'm at there. I have them all done. Well, I don't have them all done. I have about 30 of them done, and they publish more or less every day around 4 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. And I think we're into the 30s now. I'm not even sure. I haven't really decided on my top 7 or 8. I'm kind of going back and forth, but man, it's tough.
That's
You know,
tough.
you don't you don't realize how many. Well, you start to realize how many great players the Rams have had.
Yeah,
Over the years, going back to even the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and it's really difficult. And you start looking at the awards some of these guys won, and you're like, I think maybe he's top 10. And a lot of people maybe barely even know about these guys.
Well, you know what? Let me ask that question: Is how long have you been a Rams fan, and what are some of your earliest memories? As a Rams fan.
Well, like I mentioned to you offline before we started this, I grew up in Ventura County, north of LA, a family that was, Dodger fans and Ram fans. Dodger fans first, Ram fans second. And as the years went by, I just gravitated more to the Rams than any other team. And my earliest memories, I remember, probably my earliest memory is, you could probably look this up. I think it was in the mid 70s. We didn't necessarily watch football on TV. We'd watch the game if it was, when it was on, but we'd also listen to games on the radio. And I remember going down to the junior high school. That's what we called our middle schools back then. I don't know if they use that anymore, but we'd go down to the junior high school and we had a big radio playing of the Rams Cardinals playoff game. Jim Hart leading the Cardinals against the Rams. Who was the Rams quarterback? It might have been Jaworski. I don't remember. And listening to that playoff game down at the park, playing football ourselves, tackle football.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, that's probably my early. I knew you were going to ask me that, and I was like, "What is my earliest memory?" And I think that might be it. I mean, I was around very very little, during the Roman Gabriel days and Jack Snow, but I don't really specifically remember those games. But I do remember that Cardinal Ram playoff game. For some reason, it just sticks in my head.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's cool. Yeah. See, I hear about legends like that, but my earliest memories is the '99 season for me, and so anything before then I love hearing about, and I love just listening to people.
That
So
was a good year to become a Ram fan.
it was a very good year to come from. um, and that being said, did you get to witness a lot of Eric Dickerson's career?
Oh yeah, yeah. And a lot of people don't realize, and I talk about this a lot, is the 1970s before Dickerson. The Rams went to, I think it was so painful. I mean, they had one of the greatest runs in the history of the NFL. I think it was 5 NFC championship games they lost.
Wow.
They got to the one Super Bowl and lost it. And then came the Dickerson years, and we were always just this close, to being the team. And yeah, the Jackie Slater, Eric Dickerson days. Yeah, I remember all that. Flipper Anderson with the touchdown catch and run through the tunnel at Giant Stadium. Yeah, a lot of good memories.
Awesome. Oh man, no, Willie Bowen here. He's another one of our OG Rams fans. He's saying LA has a rich history in Los Angeles, California. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that being said, we know the draft is coming up. I know we're still a couple. I guess it's at end of April, so I guess it's coming closer than we think. It's not even. It's just over a month away. What would you like to see the Rams do? They have 11 picks. They don't have a first round pick, but they do have a second and 2 third-round picks. What approach would you like to see the Rams do this draft?
Well, I've been doing a bunch of mock drafts, and I think I've published 17 mock
Yeah,
drafts in some form or another. It's just fun, and a lot of times it's difficult. It's really difficult, but I think it's very clear they have to draft edge and cornerback early and often. What overall strategy, though, I'm kind of split. On the one hand, you could just amass, 13 or 14 picks by moving around, bringing a bunch of rookies, and it's kind of like throwing darts at a board. See what hits, see what sticks. Because no matter, you come out of these drafts, and a lot of people look at drafts and say, "Oh, 3 years later, what a horrible draft." But if you can get 3 starters out of a draft, you're doing okay. If the Rams could, they really need to nail this one. If they could find 4 starters moving forward, just across there's so many position groups that need a little bit of help or a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
The other strategy would be well, there's actually 3 strategies, and I can't decide. The other strategy is to maybe package some of those picks and move up earlier maybe late in the first round, or get an extra second round pick and get a couple of studs you really love at the sacrificing quantity. And yet a third thing you could do is try to accumulate drafts next year. But I think overall the strategy should be, the more I think about it, is come out of this draft with 10 guys you like, and use 2023 as a means of evaluating, okay, what do we have? Which ones of these guys are really going to help us long term, and then use that information to go get the guys you need in free agency next year when they have some money to spend, and they'll have additional draft picks as well. That was a lot to spit out there. I guess yeah, I think I think it's because I'm not really sure what they should do, but that last strategy was the one that I would lean towards. Keeping come out of this draft with 9 or 10, 11 rookies, and hopefully nail 4 starters out of it. Not necessarily going to start year one, but guys that you like moving forward.
Guys that you will hopefully want to give a second contract to. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how the draft works, because I'll find a guy, a 6th rounder, that I like. Oh my god, I love this guy. I can't believe he's still there. And you pick him, and then you go to look at some of the recent drafts, and how many of these fifths, even how many of the first and second rounders really work out. It's You'd be surprised at how many of them don't. So it's you got to be realistic about it. If you can find 4 guys, you're doing okay.
Absolutely. That's definitely something to go for. I would really love to find. I think for me, prioritizing finding a rookie pass rusher that can come in and help right away. I think that our pass rush was too inconsistent last year, and I think I know there's other needs on this roster and on this team, but I just think that has to be a top priority for this draft. And if there's someone that the Rams like that starts to fall a little bit, I wouldn't mind if they were to trade up into the first round to get them. I really wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
There's other position groups I think I'd be disappointed if they were to trade up and get, but I wouldn't mind if they traded up for a pass rusher at all.
Yeah, there may be some guys that slip to 36 that'll be there at 36, but you're right. If there's a guy you really love, there's that old Bobby Wagner story, right, where they wanted to draft Bobby Wagner, and I forget who it was. They drafted someone else instead. I forget who it was because they thought Wagner was going to slip to their next pick, something like that, and they lost out on him. So if there's a guy you really like, and the edge rushers, I think that'll be in their wheelhouse around 36, a little earlier. There's BJ Ojolari. Nolan Smith might slip a little bit because he's a little undersized. Will McDonald. There's a lot of guys there. I don't know who the Rams are going to like. I don't know who they like. Felix Anuduke Uzama, a guy like that. I'm not a trained player evaluator. I just kind of go by what I read and
Absolutely.
the noise I hear. But those are guys that I think have to be under consideration, and it's a matter of which one are they willing to give up a later pick to move up 6 spots or whatever to go ahead and grab. But yeah, that first pick, it's got to be edge, right? It just seems to me it's just has to be edge. But
Yeah, well, and I think the only reason is it's not edge is if there's a player at another position that you're really in love with, right? So
right,
that's the only thing. My other concern about this draft though is currently right now, we only have Fuller and Yeast as safety on the roster. I know that we have lost a lot of our secondary this offseason.
right.
And what are your thoughts on first off, Jordan Fuller? I still think when he's healthy, he's one of the best safeties that in the NFL. And I'm happy that he's there, and I hope that he's healthy this year. But clearly, safety is another position that's going to need to be addressed in the draft.
Yeah, Fuller, obviously, if he stays healthy, he's fine. And I really liked what I saw from Russ Yeast. I mentioned just on one of my podcasts, I get lost and I
Oh,
produce so much content. But
sorry. Thank you, Sauce. Thank you. Yes.
yeah, Quentin Lake, I was going to mention him.
Yes.
And Russ Yeast was a 7th-round pick and played like a 3rd or 4th rounder. So I think with those 3 guys, I wouldn't say we're solid, but I think we're gonna use a later pick on a safety, and we'll be fine. When I say we'll be fine, I mean at some point you just got to say, hey, these are the 4 guys we're going to roll with, and if they roll with, I would think Yeast and Fuller would be the starters. Quentin Lake, they run 3 safeties out there a lot, depending on what's going on. And then they draft one in the 6th round, and what they got Nick Scott in the 7th, they got Jordan Fuller in the 6th. So I hopefully they can find a 4th guy late in the draft to come in and help that group. But Quentin Lake, I don't know much about Quentin Lake, but I know a lot of people think he showed a lot of promise, and we'll have to see.
And I often say on my channel, the great thing about young players is they have the potential to get better, right? Just because they were maybe hit and miss their rookie year, they can show improvement in their 2nd and 3rd year, which kind of is a nice segue into. I would love to know your thoughts on our 2 wide receivers that are going into their 3rd year now. Ben Skoranek, who we drafted in the 7th round, and Tutu Atwell, who we drafted in the 2nd round. Now, I am on record saying when in Ben Skoranek's rookie year, I was really uncomfortable whenever we threw him the ball. I know he had one really big 4th down conversion catch against the Ravens, but even throughout the playoffs, there wasn't many times where I was like, "Oh, make sure to get Skoranek involved."
Yeah.
However,
that sentence has never been said.
No. But that being said, like he was a very important player for the Rams last year when Cooper Kupp went down, and you saw Baker Mayfield slinging it to Skoranek, to down there, and Van Jefferson catches the touchdown to win the game. But and we'll talk about the Rams wide receiving core as a whole. But could we start off? What are your thoughts on Tutu and Skoranek?
Well, Tutu, obviously he was overdrafted at this point. We can say that he was drafted too high. Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted Creed Humphrey, and in hindsight, yeah, the Rams blew it there. That being said, I kind of, I don't know what goes on the practice fields and in the study halls that they have, but it's really frustrating that they didn't really even give Tutu a shot, hardly, right? very few snaps, very few targets. Started to pick up last year, and maybe something's going on that we don't know about. Maybe they weren't comfortable with him learning the playbook. Who knows? But once he started getting some targets on a regular basis, it looked like, hey, this is the type of guy that, that's what the Rams have needed. I think someone that can stretch the field a little bit. Everybody's just stuffing our running game. They have no concern about, our passing game, especially last year with the offensive line issues. And that the offensive line problems we had last year changes everything, right? You can't talk about, you can't bang the Rams on not throwing the deep ball when, Stafford has, 1.5 seconds to get rid of it. So,
Yeah.
but back to 2-2, I still am hopeful. Again, I'm the eternal optimist. I just hope they do a better job of getting him involved. And he's a guy that can't really help in the blocking game from the wide receiver position, so that hurts his cause. But he was overdrafted, but I still think he, can be an impactful player. Skoranek is, I think, what some people overlook maybe is his contributions in other facets, special teams and blocking. But if he's your fifth wide receiver, I'm okay with that. Um, he's getting better. I think he obviously made it. His hands are getting better. He
Absolutely.
had
Yeah.
some drops had some drops early on, but I don't know. If he's your fifth guy, I'm comfortable with that. You can always, is there room for improvement? Sure. Could we find a fifth or sixth round wide receiver that might take his job? Possibly, but we'll see.
Well, and it's interesting. I wouldn't be a Rams content creator if we're talking about Rams wide receivers, and I didn't mention. I'm really curious to see what happens with Lance McCutcheon year two. I mean, we saw a little bit of the hype last preseason. We didn't see. I think he only had 2 catches in the year. I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's another point of frustration, and the Rams are notorious for this of like really bringing guys along slowly, and they know what they're doing. But last year, I don't know why we weren't seeing Kyron Williams and Lance McCutcheon
More.
on the field more and getting more touches. It just really confused me. Again, they know what they're doing. There's reasons maybe we're unaware of, but yeah, Lance looked like in preseason, he certainly looked like an NFL receiver.
Definitely, definitely. So I'm hoping year two he makes a jump, right? Because he's
Yeah.
got the physical attributes to be a great wide receiver.
Yeah, and if with Allen Robinson potentially moving on, I haven't heard
Yeah.
anything on that front. Last I heard was he had been given permission to look for a trade. I don't know how that works. I don't know how you tell a player and his agent to go look for a trade, but apparently
Yeah.
that's ongoing.
Well, and I've heard nothing from a credible source, but just pure speculative rumors that potentially the Colts or the Panthers might be interested in his services. But again, nothing from a credible source in that regards. But I could see those teams showing some interest in having a veteran wide receiver. Quick shout out here. We got Ramsey. It's your birthday today. Happy birthday. Thanks for being here on your birthday, man. That's awesome. Willie Bowen asked a question: who's the backup tight end to Tyler Higbee? So we know that Bryson Hopkins is there, and Hunter Long, who we just got in the Jalen Ramsey trade. Who, if anyone saw, I broke down his only catch in a
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
That's really all you can do is one catch for 8 yards. Great. But yeah, I guess what are your thoughts on the tight end room for the Rams? I do think the Rams drafted tight end this year.
Yeah, and the draft this draft is stacked with tight ends, probably the strongest position in the draft.
Really?
And one of them I think is going to slip. I originally thought, hey, would the Rams draft Darnell Washington if he was there? That guy is incredible, and there's a few other guys too. Luke Musgrave, the guy from Utah. I can't think of his name right now. There's some really, really good tight ends throughout the draft. But, Tyler Higbee is an interesting case. Or if they were really going to gear up for 2023 like I thought they might, Tyler Higbee probably would get cut post June 1. They could cut him with very little salary cap pain
Yeah.
and just move on from him because I don't really know if they're getting their money's worth from him at this point. Don't get me wrong, I love Tyler Higbee, but at this point, if they might as well kind of keep him around, they might
Yeah.
as well. And I think Bryson Hopkins is the number two, and Hunter Long will have some proving to do. I don't know if Hunter Long was a throw-in. I heard that McVay really liked him, but coming out of the draft out of Boston College. So I don't know. I think it's going to be just a competition. I would hope a Bryson Hopkins, and he's another guy like Kyren Williams and Lance McCutcheon. We finally I saw Bryson Hopkins was my disappearing man, his rookie year and his second year. And then finally, Higbee gets hurt and Hopkins steps up in the playoffs.
Played well.
Why have they been hiding this guy? Why don't they get him on the field, get him some snaps? And then last year, not much production again. I was really confused. But to answer the question, I think Hopkins will start out as the backup, and Hunter Long, hey, if he can, it'll be a competition.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A couple of shout outs here. I see we have Rudy from the Ramelia Sports Report, another great Rams content creator. Good to see you, man. Thanks for tuning on in. Have you ever collabed or seen any of Rudy's content at all? Or?
No, what was the name again? I'll make sure I do.
Yeah, the Ramelia Sports Report. Yeah, he's awesome. He's awesome.
Okay, I'll check it out.
He's an LA guy too, so yeah, he's in your neck of the woods. Ron here, hello Ron, good to see you. A few people I've noticed have been talking about Caleb Williams, and I personally I don't follow college football very closely, just very passively, but so many Ram fans are talking about Caleb Williams out of USC. Can you maybe give a little more context to the excitement behind Williams? And do you think he's that good that the Rams should be trying to figure out how to, draft him?
Well, I think Caleb Williams is the consensus is he's a generational talent. He's incredible. He will be the first pick in the draft. At this point, it's almost, nothing's 100%, but in the 2024 draft, he will be the first pick. And there's going to be a draft trading frenzy, everybody trying to get up and get that pick. I don't know, my son, who I call my special assistant on the podcast, he thinks he just wants Caleb Williams. And he asks the same question, are the Rams loading up so they can go get Caleb Williams? Well, you can't count on that because whoever ends up with that first pick, if they need a quarterback, they're not moving off of Caleb Williams. You might move off of Bryce Young. You might move off of CJ Stroud. You're not moving off Caleb Williams. If you need even if you already have your quarterback, unless there's probably a handful of teams, the Bengals. If the Bengals aren't going to end up with the first pick, but if they did and they had Joe Burrow, yeah, they'll probably trade out of there. But probably 20 teams in the NFL that have that first pick are going to stick there and draft Caleb Williams. So I guess what I'm saying is don't count on it. You could have all the draft capital you want, and you might not be able to move up and get that number one pick in 2024. But yeah, he's the real deal. He's going to be something special in the NFL.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, and it's always exciting when a young quarterback like that is coming up through the college ranks. And we saw that a lot with Trevor Lawrence. And clearly in year two, he's proven that he can be a reliable starting quarterback. And if he continues to go up the way that he.
Yeah, I think what Ram fans should be pulling for is that Caleb Williams ends up on an AFC team if the Rams can't find a way to get him for themselves. Because right now, the NFC is quarterback depleted, and that way.
Definitely. Well, yeah, and I feel like this past week I've had so many people ask me like, "Oh, rank your top 3 NFC quarterbacks. And I guess you got to put Jalen Hurts up at number 1 after last season. I'm comfortable putting a healthy Matt Stafford at number
Right.
2.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
And then
Now, a lot of people were dinging Stafford for last year, but I don't think that's fair. There
yeah,
was just too much going on.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's quick touch on this. I don't like to make a big deal of the retirement rumors for McVay, Stafford, or Donald, mainly because we don't hear about it from them that often. I don't believe that Matthew Stafford is considering retiring this year. However, you hear trade speculations by Mike Florio. I I kind of just think that it's, they come from these unnamed sources with not a lot of weight to them, and it could have just been like one conversation of, oh, what if Matthew Stafford got traded by the Rams? And Florio was able to like put that into like, oh, like they would totally love to move on from him if they could. And like there was that article that the Jets should look at Stafford as the backup plan if Rodgers doesn't go through. But do you get frustrated when you hear these, trade rumors about our quarterback?
Yeah, I do, and I have to tell you, I don't give any credence to anything Mike Florio says about the Rams
Yeah,
because he's on my Mount Rushmore of Ram haters. He's just got
absolutely.
something about the Rams he doesn't like,
Especially
and
McVay.
yeah, yeah, right. And there's always this negativity regarding the Rams coming from him. He was the one that said, as he wrote a sentence that you should never hear in the history of the world. Oh yeah, I think something like this. Yeah, they won a Super Bowl with Stafford, but and it's like there that sentence should never be spoken. It
Yeah,
just sounded so silly to me. Yeah, they won a Super Bowl, and they're fine with the way everything's gone down. They got some remodeling to do, but I don't. As a Ram fan, I'm happy with the way things have turned out so far. Not happy with 2022, but hey, we got a Super Bowl in the bag.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, I gotta give a shout out here to Grandizer 12. He comes in and he asks, "Whose house?" Ram's house.
Rams house, that's right.
Absolutely. Hey Tommy Huxley, good to see you. He's a Niners fan, but even he agrees Stafford is the second best quarterback in the NFC. Appreciate it. Um, yeah, we only have a couple more minutes here, but I just appreciate everyone tuning on in. Make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you go over to Mark's channel, the Rams Up podcast. The link to his channel is pinned in the live chat and also in the description below. And Mark, I would just love to know, we haven't talked on it. I know we've talked about the draft. We've talked about so much here. What are you hoping the Rams do via free agency? Are you one of the Ram fans that are hoping they make some moves, maybe sign a veteran quarterback, sign some more veterans to help out on defense? Or are you content of them just solely focusing on draft and development?
I think at this point, the way they've already moved through free agency, I think the only path for them is free agency wise is to find some, later in the free agency season, maybe even after the draft, maybe even after June 1 cuts, find a few veterans to bring in to fill a couple of holes that remain after the draft. That's what I'd expect them to do. I don't want them at this point. I don't want them restructuring contracts to bring in 2 or 3 free agents. I'd rather they just because that restructuring is going to hurt them down the road, right?
Mhm.
If this is the path they're going to go, let's continue to take it on the chin this year. Find a way to put a decent product on the field, so we have at least a shot at the playoffs this year, and then continue that focus on next year. I think that's what they're. I think that's what they're going to do. And at this point, I'm behind that plan.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. And especially like I think right now we're projected to have around 61 million in cap space next year. And if they
Right.
are able to trade Robinson, that can potentially increase to 70 to 80 million depending on what the Rams do with in house essentially. And they made the big move with Noteboom restructuring his contract, which does not get talked about enough. But I was really happy to see Noteboom do that when
Yeah.
he didn't have to. And I know he's not happy with how last year went. Obviously the injury and I don't think he was really happy with his play leading up to. And so he's someone that I'm cheering on, and I hope he can get right this offseason.
Yeah, hopefully he's the answer at left tackle. We haven't talked a lot about offensive line.
Yeah.
I think they're in okay shape, but we're really counting on Noteboom to come through for us.
Well, and I was talking to a few Ram fans that they would like to see Alaric Jackson go to left tackle and shift
Right.
Noteboom to the inside at left guard. What do you think of that?
Well, that's what I was originally thinking as well. I don't know if you guys saw Alaric Jackson on Twitter
Mm-hmm.
a month ago. He actually wrote basically an op-ed
Yeah,
on on
it's rare to see an offensive lineman do that.
yeah, but, it was kind of refreshing. Is that the right word? But he was calling his teammates out. And then there's a writer that I kind of like. He's on Twitter a lot. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Is it Lane Chizerak? Something like that. And he provided some stats that said over his career, um, Noteboom, according to Pro Football Focus, has performed a lot better at tackle than at guard. Remember, he did play guard a little bit.
Yeah, he was
So,
a guy. Yeah.
yeah, but you could plug Alaric Jackson at right guard. Is Logan Bruss ready to play? Who
Mhm.
knows? You know, I don't know, but I think they have 8 guys. Yeah, Logan. Someone just mentioned Logan Bruss. Yeah, they got 8 guys that, with some flexibility there, bring it together. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Kyle here, I appreciate you coming in. He said, "Mark, love hearing your side to everything. Peo, I think he should be in more shows coming up. Love getting the conversation started." Absolutely. You know what? Mark, you are welcome on my channel anytime.
Yeah, we do
Absolutely.
it again sometime. It's fun.
All right. Yeah. Well, Mark, stick around. We'll talk off camera a little bit. But everyone, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, whether you're watching live with us now or on the replay. We're gonna end it there. And of course, you gotta go subscribe to Rams Up Podcast. Mark, he has consistent Rams content coming out. Really appreciate the hard work that you put into that, Mark. And I hope that everybody will go and subscribe, like all that jazz. And yeah, Mark, any closing remarks for our viewers?
No, I think this is great, and I think it's cool that you have a Canadian Ram fan. There's a couple I've run into. One of my regular guests is from Long Island, so it's kind of neat. We have Ram fans all over the continent. But glad to be on your show. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, everyone. As always, go Rams, horns up, and peace out. Let's go Rams.